1 minute to go.
1 minute to go.
Can we have Howard, please?
Can we have Howard?
Continuity on air in 49 seconds.
All right, 50 seconds to broadcast. Howard, where the hell is Howard? Come on, buddy.
You ready? Hey, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mwah.
Thank you very much. Hello. Thank you for coming. You know, every time I'm on this stage, I'm used to coming down here and I step in.
We're not lit
crazy.
for that today.
How many of you have seen the play? Most of you?
How many of you have not seen it?
Whoa.
Okay, so for those who haven't seen the show, Bryan, tell us roughly what it's about.
Well, it's interesting because it's about so many different things and so many different layers, and it'll resonate with different people from different cultures and countries. It has a lot to do with manipulation and servicing an agenda that we have been forced to endure, whether we realize it or not. It's very prescient. Paddy Chayefsky wrote the screenplay for Network over 40 years ago, way before fake news, way before the debacle of Donald Trump or Brexit and all the things that are changing our world as we know it. But it is true that when you realize it, that news has always been really a formulated presentation that serves the agenda of the person on top, the person in power. This is what I want to say. So if you have a news program that's 30 minutes, and the person in charge will say, I want to dedicate most of the time to this story and a little bit to that, and depending on if it serves their political ideology or sensibilities. So we have been, I don't want to say the victim, but we've been on the receiving end of this kind of treatment for a long time, so it's not any different. But it's so interesting how this encompasses news as entertainment, because it's more palatable, because it's easier to take in, because it is something we want to hear. In fact, Howard Beale at one time, my character says, don't look to us for the truth, because we just tell you what you want to hear. And it's like when you go on the internet right now and you see a story and you click on it, oh, that looks interesting, and you read the story, and then the powers that be go, oh, here she clicked on that story, go to the next one, and it's like, you might want to click on this story. Since you like these things, you might, and all of a sudden that happens in Amazon, that happens in all these other outlets that start to compile data based on your habits. And it's 1984. It's kind of scary in a way, right?
It's also news as show business, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's about the blurring of that line. Do you want to just explain the sort of rough story of your character? Because it's just a cracking tale, despite, I mean, as well as all the stuff that's underneath it.
Yeah, Howard Beale is a man who has been a newscaster for a long time, and he's just been fired. And he probably deserves it, because he's gotten to the point of just reading the news, he's phoning it in. And out of that depression, he makes a declarative statement that he wants to do something that is very definitive, I'll leave it at that, and which creates uproar. But that uproar drew a lot of attention. And now he's a big hit because he was so, avant-garde with his comments and loose-lipped. And so he goes further and further and says the most outrageous things. Does that sound like anybody, perhaps from my country? And he's become this sensation. And that's really the point. What's interesting about it, though, is that I had talked about doing this with Ivo van Hove, the director, 3 years ago. This is before Trump, before Brexit, before a lot of the anxiety-filled movements of the world have been going on, whether it's in the Philippines or in France or in Austria or Italy. I mean, there's in Germany, everywhere. There's a lot of anxiety in our society right now, and I think this show really illustrates that and exposes that.
I'm amazed that you had discussions about this before Trump happened, because it
Yeah.
feels like a direct response to exactly what happened in America 2 years ago. Was that because you saw it coming, or was that coincidence?
It wasn't me at all.
It was Ivo.
The National Theater had this earmarked. They were ready to do it. And 3 years ago, I was shooting a film here in London, and that's when I met with Ivo, and I was very intrigued to do it. But the timetable that was set, I was not able to meet. I had other obligations. And so I had to say no. Well, it turns out that Ivo had another obligation that he really had to do in directing an opera somewhere else. And the National said, well, we can push it a year. And when they pushed it a year to this time, then it opened up my availability, and we locked it in, and I want to do that. And so that's how I was fortunate enough to be able to come here at this time.
One of the themes of the show, and honestly, if you haven't seen it, it's off the scale extraordinary, isn't it? Is the way that it shows how power can be achieved by tapping into popular anger. You know, we have a little version of that here with the Daily Mail. You have a bigger version of it in the States with your president. But I mean, that's terrifying.
It is terrifying, but demagoguery is not new. It is actually fundamental in many cases throughout history, where you have someone who comes up and starts denigrating independence and democracy and wanting to do away or diminish the importance of a free press, diminish the freedoms of people, and want to take over more. Like when the president of China was just given carte blanche to continue on, our president said, "Hey, that's not a bad idea. Maybe we should do that here." It's like, by the way, on behalf of all Americans with sensibilities, my apologies. We are going through. We're going through what is it? We're going through a downward spiral, and hopefully we're somewhere near the bottom so that we can realize, hello, help! We're in need of resurrection of sorts, and we'll find it. We'll find it. There were certain conditions, I suppose, perhaps. Just laziness or apathy or something that happened in our country to say, well, it'll be done, and don't worry about it. And we turned our backs or got lazy, and this is what happened. So I guess in some way we deserve what we got. And no, you don't think so?
I think maybe that was one part of it. I think there was an awful lot more, and I'm interested that. I mean, you've always been pretty political. This play, despite it seeming to be about news and show business, is clearly political. And not the last movie you did, but you did Trumbo a couple of years ago, which was an amazing movie for which Bryan got the Oscar nomination, about the McCarthy era. So you're clearly drawn to that side of your culture, which is about exposing, which is about power, which is about corruption, which is about money, about honesty. I mean, are those the themes that draw you in, or is that just two out of 1,000 different projects?
No. I mean, it's themes that draw me in as a person. I select my projects based on what moves me, what resonates with me. Not different from any novel that you read that you cannot wait to get back to the next chapter. It's the same thing when I read a good play or a good script, that I start conjuring the character. If I start doing that automatically, involuntarily, I know that's a good sign. there's something getting under my skin that this story is important, that it has some social statement that needs to be said. On the other hand, it could be just pure entertainment, and there is true value in just going to the cinema and laughing. So I'm not so restrictive that it has to be important, or I don't want to do it. Like you, like everyone, I want to be able to experience all facets of my personality. I want to be serious sometimes. I want to be silly sometimes.
I love the way that straight after Breaking Bad, you went into Godzilla.
Yeah.
Why not?
I did. I first turned it down because
Too silly.
Because of that. Because I revered Breaking Bad and the writing of it so much that I thought, the next thing has to be way up there. And I thought, well, that's not really fair. And what's wrong? I loved Godzilla when I was a kid, and so let's do a Godzilla movie. And so I did. And then the next thing I think was All the Way. I played an American president on Broadway. Very important. Within 6 months, he passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which was enormously foundational for our country. And so you just move on from there.
You have such an interesting system whereby you decide whether or not you want to do a script that you're sent.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us about the CAPS system.
The CAPS system. It's a Cranston Assessment of Projects system.
Doesn't work for anybody else.
Sounds kind of, unless your last name starts with C. For those of you who are actors, and for those of you who are not, basically when you start acting, you put out an exorbitant amount of energy trying to find out where there's activity, where there's people are casting, what acting workshops to get into, what can you do? You're constantly putting out information. Hopefully that some, like a boomerang, will come back to you. If you are extremely fortunate, as I have been, and you get struck by lightning and something happens and you get notoriety and the energy that you normally put out just turns around and comes back to you. So without putting out as much energy, I am using the same amount of energy guarding the gate of having the wonderful problem of too many scripts to read, too many offers to go through. And it is an issue because you want to be able to be selective. I'm financially secure. I don't want to make a creative decision out of financial need, and nor should I. I shouldn't make any. I'm losing money being on stage, and I love it. I do. The National Theater has been very kind, but they offer no frills. There's no pampering here. You should see my dressing room. It's like, this is kind of nice.
How does it work that you're losing money, though? Because they pay you so little and you're having to live in England and buy all your friends' tickets for your show.
Exactly right. So when all my friends and colleagues find out, you're doing a play in London, I'm there. And they're flying over, and I thought, well, I'm going to buy them their tickets, because they're making the effort. I can't wait to see that bill. I literally gave them my credit card on file, and they just go, two more. They're just constantly putting it in the machine, and
You got 2 more today because you're paying for the ones in the books.
I know, I'm paying for the ones in the books. It doesn't matter. Money is money. You know what? I try to tell young actors that too. I say, you've got to love what you do. You've got to love the gift that you have of acting. It has to empower you to the point that you are dedicating your life to this relationship. I have 3 dedicated relationships. One to my wife, one to my daughter, and one to acting. And that's enough. I don't do anything else. But you have to be dedicated to the relationship, because when it gets hard for you actors or writers or directors, and it will, you have to rely on the depth of love and dedication you have to that art form to get you through. Because if you're in a relationship, and we all have, if you're of any age at all, where you have one foot out of the relationship and just where's the last straw, and if there's any kind of hardship at all, you go, I'm done, I'm out. Well, if you don't love acting or whatever your chosen art form is, and the first bump in the road comes, you're out. You don't need it. So I can save you a lot of time. If you are not invested and in love with acting or with whatever your art form is, leave now, and you really save yourself a lot of frustration. But it really takes that. It takes that dedication.
So even at that moment, like way early on in your career where you found yourself performing, and I've seen the performance, in an advert for hemorrhoid cream. Did that foot...
You had to bring that up.
Did that foot move towards the door?
I'm actually sitting like this.
It didn't challenge your...
No, that did that for money.
Right.
Yeah. So that you want to be clear. I don't have a snobbish relationship to money. I believe that's a bunch of BS. When I don't need money. I live on art, and it's like, I have been very poor as a kid. My house, my parents split up in a terrible relationship when I was 11. We lost our home. We were kicked out. I went to live with my grandparents for a year, and my mother had emotional trouble, and I didn't see my father for 11 years, and we were poor. So I lived that life, and now I have more money than I ever thought I would possibly have. And it's better to be rich than poor. That's the conclusion of it. Thank you, and good night. No, so... But it's just to be honest about it. Yes, money's great, but it's not what makes me happy. When I get an offer to do a film or a play, to be absolutely honest with you, I have no idea how much money I'm making doing this play. It doesn't matter to me.
Let us go back then to where we started a while back on the cap system.
Yes.
So money isn't one of your criteria.
No.
What are the criteria?
Story. It's always story first. For all of you writers out there, I bow to you. Every single performance art starts with the foundation of writing. It is by far the most important element in performance art. It's the genesis. It's where it has to begin. The easiest work an actor has ever had to do is on well-written material. The hardest work is on poorly written material, because you're not moved, you're not motivated, you're not compelled to anything. But when you read something like All the Way or Network or Breaking Bad, it takes you on that journey, and everything seems to be so easy. They're helping you think of how to develop a character all along the way. On badly written material, I should say, you have to struggle to find the honesty or the elements that you can use to develop a character. So I look for those. It's always the story. That gets the most credit. The support of that, the text of that, because sometimes you hear a great story, but you read the play and it's like, oh, I think this writer missed the core of it. So it's those two together. Then it's the character. Is the character important to the telling of the story? Do I feel moved? Am I starting to conjure ideas of the character? And then it's the director. I want to see if he or she and I are we looking in the same direction? We don't have to be exactly on the same point, but are we looking in the general direction together so that we can flow together, so that we can have this relationship that allows us to develop it further. From there, you go to other cast members that may contribute to it, and it goes on down. And one thing is money. It's not on the list because it doesn't matter anymore.
Has your system ever let you down? Have you ever had a great story, well told, good director, good cast, shit film?
No.
Good.
But it has tricked me the other way. Now, I was offered a role on the movie Spotlight, which won an Oscar just today. And as I constantly formulate and reformulate, I realized, and I would like to this address to the writers out there, what I realized about Spotlight, as compelling as it was, and I really thought it was a good film, but when I read it, I realized that it lacked conflict. There was no conflict in the story of Spotlight. Now, what is conflict? To me, it's when the protagonist and antagonist have an opposing force. I want to kill you. You want to stay alive. That's pretty conflicting. I want to be married to you. You have no interest in being married. That's conflict. So you have opposing forces. There's no opposing forces in the story of Spotlight when you think about it. And so because of that, I turned it down. And then I saw it and I went, why did this work? And then it worked because it had a tremendous amount of impediment. And an abundance of impediment replaced conflict. So what is impediment? If the journalist wanted to talk to a priest who was suspected as being a pedophile, and he didn't want to talk, I don't want to talk to you. That's not conflict. He's just not cooperating. If you have a deadline to get through something, and you have stacks and stacks of paper to read, that's not conflict. That's an impediment. That's just time pressure. If you need to get into an office, and these are all things from the movie, I need to get in an office to do some research, and the security guard closes it because it's 5 o'clock, that's not conflict. He's just doing his job. He's not trying to stop you. It's just situational. So if you add up all those things, you have, he missed that. It almost seems like conflict with enough impediments. And so I had to restructure then to allow myself to be aware of that the next time I read a story that has an abundance of impediments that may indeed replace, I know this is probably talking to in-house kind of shop talk, but I think is that pretty clear? I think so.
Yeah, no, that's...
Anyway, that's what I found.
So interesting, and so interesting the way that you look at your work from that big picture side of it. It makes me yet more confused because you're so clear about what you're doing. We have such a mission with your work as to why it took you so long to realize you wanted to be an actor, because you trained as a policeman. Yeah,
well, my father was an actor, so and he had the typical actor's life: up and down and down and down and up, down, 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 up, down. We got a brand new car one year, and then the next year we got rid of that new car and got an old car. But you're a kid; I don't know any difference. One year, we built in swimming pool in our backyard, the trucks, the building it in, the gunite, the whole thing. The following year, my mother told us we couldn't afford the chemicals to keep the pool clean. So there was that kind of polarity that was going on in my life. But as a child, you don't really know it. And as long as there was consistency of parental presence, you basically are okay, I think. I didn't realize that I should be ashamed of anything or embarrassed about anything until later. And then my parents broke up in a terrible way, and my dad was ego-driven and had to become a star. He had to become a star, and that was his goal. It's not uncommon there's a lot of people in Hollywood, New York, and London who go, I want to be a star. I have that drive to be a star. And I would tell them, you're missing it. You are most likely destined to fail because you're going after something that's a result of something else.
Yeah.
And so I would tell you, focus on what you do, what you love. And if you're supposed to be struck by lightning and have some luck in your life, then it will happen. But it won't happen in your timetable. You know, it's like it'll happen if it's supposed to happen. But I chose to be an actor afterward because of my experience with my father. And as I got into my teens, I went, oh, that's not. And he wasn't around. I didn't see him for 11 years. So as a 16-year-old, I think subliminally, now in retrospect, I was looking for a replacement, a kind of a father figure. And a policeman seemed really masculine to me and authoritative. And so
And in control.
And control and
Which your life didn't have at that point.
Yeah, I think so. And so I followed that until my first acting class in college as an elective course. Get this. Can I tell this story?
Please.
So I'm 19 years old. It's 1975, something like that, 75. And I walk in, I'm nervous, and the teacher hands out sheets of paper that are scenes to whomever you're standing next to. Here, you two read this scene, you two read this scene, you two. And I happen to be standing next to a very pretty girl. I didn't even know it at the time. I'm just getting the scene, and you two read this scene, and I look, oh, she's, okay. And I look down at this sheet of paper, the scene, and it says at the top, one line, a couple is making out on a park bench. And I look over, and she's chatting to a friend of hers. She hasn't read that yet. And I look, and I go, at any second, she's going to read that, and she's going to look over to see who she has to kiss. And I better make myself presentable. So I started thinking about, like those nature films about the birds that try to look fancy, Pick me, look, I'd make a good mate kind of thing. I'm trying to posture, It's like, oh, God. And I'm nervous. And she does read it, and and then she looks up to see who she has to kiss, and this is her reaction. Now, you may think that's ambivalence. I took that as a victory. There was no grimace involved. So we waited and we waited. Finally, we were called up. Now, the scene on the park bench, the boy is breaking up with the girl. And his first line is, I forget the name of the character. It's like, Stephanie, we need to talk. And so that's on the first page. So I go to the second page where I have more dialogue, and I put it down on the floor because I'm ready to start. I want to break up with her, but she doesn't want to break up with me. So I put it down, and I think, I'm going to kiss her. I hope she's ready for it. I'm going to kiss her. And I put it down, and before I can completely turn, whoop! She's on me. And when I say on me, I mean on me. She's all over me, and I'm kissing and kissing, and we're kissing, and I mean hands and tongue and everything. And then I feel this on my upstage thigh, it's like this, and I don't know what and she does it, like this, and I think, oh, maybe she likes that, so I did it to her. I've heard of spanking, but I hadn't tried it yet. So she's tapping, and then, she taps me again, and I go, I have the first line. She's telling me, get on with it. So it's like, oh, wait, Stephanie, hey. And I kind of take off, and then I put her to the side, and I go, oh, God. Yeah, I forgot the first line. So she completely threw me. So now I'm thinking, this is back in the time when a boy actually had to ask a girl out for a date. I'm that old. And so I thought, this is going to be the easiest lunch date I've ever had. We've already been to second base. So this is easy. So at the break, I come up to her and I say, hey, I thought that went pretty well. And she said, well, it was a little rough in the beginning. And I went, yeah, sorry, I lost my place. That's all right. We picked it up. And yeah, listen, do you want to go have lunch sometime? And she looked at me like I was a lost puppy. Like, oh. No, I have a boyfriend, so I'll see you later. And she walked away. And of course, when a 19-year-old boy is embarrassed, we feign indifference. So when she went, no, I have a boyfriend, of course I go, sure, no problem. That's okay. I can go through a list. I got a lot of them. And then she walks away and is like, what happened? Well, okay, so a couple things are happening. I'm 19 years old. I could tell you with absolute certainty that in my police science courses in college, I was never given the task of kissing anyone. This was my responsibility in this class. That alone was crazy. I have to kiss this girl to get an A or whatever. So that was alone. But the second thing was, I would have bet any amount of money that this girl liked me. I absolutely knew she did. She was acting. So that's the second thing that was making me spin. It really blew my mind. And she was a brilliant, brilliant actor. I don't know whatever happened to Meryl Streep, but she had... I hope she's well. But that's what started it. So from that point on, at 19, I was, oh my God, and I knew I didn't want to be a policeman. I was going that way because I thought I should. And a couple years later, I developed a credo that I lived by, and that was, I hope to pursue something that I loved and hopefully became good at, as opposed to pursuing something that I was good at, but I didn't love. And so that was, from 22 years old, I said, I'm in. This is what I'm going to do. I have to work like hell to try to be good at it so that I can make a living. And that was my goal. I think subliminally, I used my father's ego-driven sensibility that he had to be a star as a cautionary tale, and I thought, okay, I'm not going to go down that road. It destroyed him. I just want to make a living. If I can say that, I can honestly say I make a living as an actor, that's my achievement. Whatever happens, however, it goes. So from 22 years old, I let go of all of that, and I just said, I want to be an actor. And at 25 is when I started working really regularly, and I never had done anything ever since.
At 25, you were a working actor. You were making a living for yourself, and you were doing fine. And for the next 25 years, you worked consistently, and you were a reliable, supporting actor on loads of TV shows and, all over the place. What happened? What happened to you as a human? What happened to you as an actor that turned you from that into the greatest TV actor of our time? No, don't even bother to deny it, because you just are. But something elevated you. I mean, you could have stayed at that forever, but what sent you from here, like good, to off the scale?
There's several components that you need to be a success in the arts. One is you have to be talented, and I don't say that as a brag, but just as a sense of self-confidence. That you have to, if I asked any of you who are in the arts, if you're talented, you better say yes. You have to. Because
We're British, we don't do that.
yeah, well, you better. But I usually say this when I talk to colleges, and I've been to RADA and BADA, and I've been to Oxford, and I've been to Cambridge, and talking to a bunch of groups, and just trying to help them see if they can avoid hurdles that are unnecessary. And by and large, that is, focusing on things that you are in love with, and as I said before. But is that you beeping?
I think it is me,
Is
yeah.
it beeping? Should we answer it?
It's my
It's your thing.
microphone, not
It's your
my...
microphone.
No, maybe it's not me.
You have to be talented. You have to be persistent, and you have to be patient. And that doesn't contradict each other. You have still keeping the enthusiasm as you're moving toward accomplishing what you want to accomplish as an artist, keeping going, and yet at the same time realizing it's not on your timetable. It's just not. It'll happen when it's going to happen. And the last component is the most fickle of all, and that's luck. You will not have a successful career in the arts unless you get lucky. And I don't say that to you as a warning or anything, but actually as a sense of optimism, that's a missing component that you can't, it's something out of the ether. And that's why I say you've got to love it. That if by chance your career doesn't offer you as much luck as it hit me, you still have to be happy. You still have to know that you're in the right place for you. And so I encourage you to continue on with that. But you'll have to get lucky. I talk about it in the book. I want to dispel the idea that there was any kind of destiny, that I was going to rise, and I was in the right place at the right time. But you have to be talented when you get that call. If I called you up and said, okay, you're a pianist, play something for me, and you're not ready, then that's not lucky. Or to sing a song, or let me read, you're a writer, let me read something that you're really proud of, and if you don't have it, then you're not ready, you're not prepared. So you've got to continue to do the work, put the work out there because you love it, because you're talented, and because that is your destiny. And whatever level of success you're supposed to get in your life is what you'll get. It may be fatalistic, but I live by that.
I think you're completely right. I think there is another element in there. Having read the book and thought about you a lot all week, which is really fun. Enjoyed it. I think there's an additional thing, which is I think you had this very unusual childhood. You had a very harmonious first 11 years, and then you had a very turbulent next decade. And with your mother was drinking,
Yeah.
and your father you didn't speak to for 11 years, and your house got taken away, and there was a lot of, we would call it abuse now, you probably didn't then, but you had a very abusive teenage. And I think what you've done, I mean, a lot of people have tough childhoods, but you seem to have taken all the pain that you felt as a child and used it in your work in a way that I think is unusual. I think you began with talent, but I think what you've done with the emotions that you've gone through in your life and the way that you've applied them to your work, I mean, when we watch you in Breaking Bad, the fact that you can simultaneously be evil and we adore you, I don't know anybody else who could be as complex in their character portrayal of that man as you managed to. And I think it's because of the complexities of your childhood.
Well, that's a very Freudian assessment.
I give you Bryan Cranston.